Welcome to the Rise of Cryptocurrencies show. I'm speaking with Adam Meister today, who is a great guest that we had on last year, a Bitcoin bull, a Bitcoin investor, and obviously a popular blogger and a super smart guy, world traveler. I love to speak with him every time I get a chance, and I wanted to catch up and get his take on what's going on in the crypto world in 2018. We're going to have a content-driven show, no fluff. So let's get right into it. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. I'm pumped.
Well, stay pumped. Let's get to it. I'm thrilled to be recording, and publishing this interview because first off, how have things changed, huh? The sentiment towards this industry was so radically different, not even a year ago, and you live and breathe this sector. Tell us some of the swings and emotions that people around you have had since January until present. It's a great study in how people behave in cycles.
Oh, yeah. So I was in San Francisco back in January, and it was irrational exuberance for the ICOs. Everybody and their mother was talking ICOs, Ethereum. Well, we're going to have the next Bitcoin. And they wouldn't even say that. We're going to have the next Ethereum, maybe even. I mean, Bitcoin was like the granddad that they wanted to ignore. It was old-fashioned. They were talking about all this new technology, completely unproven and just written out on white papers. But yeah, there's going to be all this a revolution of blockchain this and ICO that, and then those people disappeared as the price of everything went down in terms of fiat. They did not value their wealth in Bitcoin like I had been telling people to do. Just stick with your Bitcoin. If there's an up or there's a down, you'll still have the same amount of Bitcoin as you did before. But people were, everybody and their father was a trader all of a sudden, an expert trader. And everybody seemed like an expert trader when the price is going up. Everybody seems like a genius. But this period of time we're in now that is transitioned to is the strong hand time. The people who are just sticking with what they had and not panicking and not going back into fiat. And I think people will be very happy if they stick around and aren't Johnny-come-latelys like those other people.
Well, and you know what? It's it's good you say that because Wealth Research was one of the first newsletters in the world to cover Bitcoin at about 400. I mean, even in 6,000s, people who bought originally are sitting on 15 times their money. I mean, it's what's to complain about? So let's talk about the Lightning Network. How significant is this for the future of Bitcoin? And can you share with us the latest on the developments that are going on?
Well, I think when the time comes, when people want to spend their Bitcoin, when the time comes that many different companies out there, many different the places of business want to accept Bitcoin, the Lightning Network is going to be awesome because it speeds up the transactions. You could do micro transactions, and so they're building it right now. It's still in the test phase and everything. The people who are playing around with it are coders and programmers, and I don't recommend anyone just to jump into it because you could lose your Bitcoin that way. But the point is there are all sorts of creative people all over the world. And I met Lightning Network people in Calgary, in Edmonton, of all places, and all over, just working on the technical side, coming up with all these innovative ways of sending small transactions to power all sorts of businesses we won't even be able to contemplate at this point. So behind the scenes, it is progressing nicely. It is going to be definitely ready for when people want to use their Bitcoin to buy things. And I point that out because right now, not a lot of businesses are really accepting Bitcoin. And surely not a lot of people with Bitcoin want to spend their Bitcoin right now. Just because I'd say many people who are in Bitcoin are either traders or they're holders like I am. And they're using it as a store of value. So if you're using it as a store of value, you're not ready to spend it on buying a minute on a exercise bike or something like that. I mean, these are things people are developing with Lightning Network, with these microtransactions. It's very, very interesting. But again, this reminds us back in the early days of the internet. They couldn't have predicted YouTube and social media. So who knows what this Lightning Network is going to power in the future?
Definitely. And just for people who don't know, currently Bitcoin can process how many transactions per second?
No, I don't even know. A lot less than Visa. That's what they compare it to.
Exactly. So Visa and Mastercard, they can process about 25,000 transactions per second, and Bitcoin can do about three. With the Lightning Network, it'll be able to do thousands of transactions per second. So coming very close to what Visa and Mastercard have been building for 60 or 70, 80 years now. And obviously the cost would be almost irrelevant to talk about, much cheaper than any of the current systems that we have. So this is the breakthrough in the Lightning Network when and if it's ready. Now, Adam, I want to switch gears and I want to ask you about big players putting large sums into crypto trading. Goldman, Citibank, J.P. Morgan, Fidelity, who's already live with it. Are the regulators blocking progress right now and blocking basically mass adoption?
No, I would say they're not, because if Fidelity and Bakkt are jumping into this thing, and it's pretty obvious there's going to be a Bitcoin ETF approved eventually. I mean, this is going to open the floodgates for institutional money. There's so many people on the sidelines right now and that are used to investing in traditional ways where other people hold their money, whether they buy stocks through a broker or they put all their money in a bank. People don't want to take on the personal responsibility of cryptocurrency and controlling their own private key. That's what's scaring people right now. People said, well, Adam, I don't want to get into it because if I lose a series of numbers, that's it. No one's there to back me up. They want their
just so everyone's clear, you're talking about custodian services, which is one of the biggest and most important developments that can happen with mass adoption. But I'm sorry to disrupt you. Please go on.
Yeah, so the custodial service. I don't believe in custodial service. I take care of my own Bitcoin. I mean, personal responsibility is the new counterculture here, is what I tell people. But most people in regular culture want other people to take responsibility over their wealth for some reason. And that's what they grew up with. That's what they're used to. So yeah, these custodial services, which have the blessing, clearly have the blessing of the United States government, are going to allow a lot of people on the sidelines to come in. So again, and let's talk about Gemini and Coinbase. These are places where you can trade and buy Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. They're expanding. They're following these rules and regulations. Now, of course, if there were no rules and regulations, there'd be a lot more trading companies out in the United States and stuff. But I don't think it's stifling it. I think it's people's own fear of the unknown. And when these names that they know, like Fidelity, come in and say, we'll take care of your money for you, they'll want to buy Bitcoin. And that's a reminder to everyone out there that hasn't jumped in yet to Bitcoin. If you need to realize you're going to end up complaining one day and saying, oh, all the mainstream people have now jumped in. It's so expensive, I can't get in. Well, the mainstream people are scared right now, and they're waiting for there to be custodial accounts. Get in before the custodial accounts come, so you don't regret it one day. It is still so early in all this.
Now, Nouriel Roubini, Dr. Doom, as he's nicknamed, mentioned in a recent interview that blockchain is useless and that crypto is basically a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. His argument rests on the fact that 10 years into it, there's still no killer app, as he calls it, or something that is breakthrough that people use on a daily basis. The internet, he compares it, he says, the internet had websites and had emails, and he says, and I quote, crypto has crypto kitties. Is that the best that you got? Thoughts on this subject, on the killer app and the fact that 10 years into it, there's still no killer app?
Well, that's the killer app aspect is interesting, but this dude, he loves to rip on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. That is his big thing. There are a lot of guys who get on that line of thinking, but it helps their own businesses. It builds up their reputation in certain communities where they'll be able to sell books and get on shows. I try to ignore people like that because they want attention. And so there's a lot of people who talk bad about Bitcoin. There were a lot of people who talked bad about the internet back in the day when it was just email and Netscape and all of that. And they're in the dustbin of history right now. We look back at some of that stuff and we laugh. But, you know, let's just address, like, if a normal person, not someone like him, said, you know, well, what's the killer app of Bitcoin right now? Well, I got to tell you, I mean, if you're in a country like Zimbabwe and you cannot send your wealth out through your bank, okay, you can't send your brother a bank transfer in South Africa because Zimbabwe does not allow money out of the country. There's your killer app right there. That people buy that Bitcoin to send value out of Zimbabwe. They do this in other countries. It also is a protection against inflation in Venezuela. Again, I know a lot of people in Venezuela. I have been to Zimbabwe where I saw this happen, you know, where I saw people stand in line all day to get $50 out of the bank. You can either get $50 out of the bank and then, you know, drive it to South Africa, or you can buy Bitcoin on the exchange and send the Bitcoin out of the country. So it's an uncensorable way of moving value out of countries with strict fiat regimes, with you know, not allowing people to do it.
And, you know, talking about Nouriel Roubini and talking about this killer app, people sometimes forget that, or they make comparisons that are not actually valued or valid. So planes, to popularize commercial airlines, it took about 50 or 60 years. And so was the idea of an airplane not good back in the early part of the 20th century, just because people weren't using it back then when it was just not safe and not ready for mass usage? The first cars, the Model T for Ford, that thing crashed and burned more passengers than any other car in history. Did people stop driving? No. And obviously, talking about mass adoption, there are billions of people who still use manual labor in the farms. Does that mean that tractor is a solution to a problem that doesn't exist? So many things that Dr. Roubini is saying, they're just not valid in my opinion at all.
I agree. You know, people have to be patient too. It's impulsive. He doesn't have long-term thinking. Long-term thinking is what success is all about. And just wait. I say be patient. I mean, people have been saying what he's been saying for 5 years now. I mean, first of all, he's been saying the same thing. I mean, he could have bought Bitcoin when it was $40. I think he's kind of bitter about that also.
So. Well, that's true. Well, hey, let's move on here from the Nouriel Roubini bashing contest and ask you: was 2017 a price bubble?
Well, in the long, it definitely it ramped up way too fast in terms of fiat, and it's gone down to still a level. What's it, like $6,000 some dollars? This is more than it was a year ago, I believe. Yeah, I think it was only about $5,000 a year ago. So yeah, there was definitely a bubble, but again, we're going to look back on this one day, and we'll see that it was a bubble. We'll still say, ooh, I wish I could get it for $20,000. I mean, just like I remember back in 2013, because I bought my first Bitcoin in 2013, and around the Mt. Gox time, and I paid like $600 for, I paid $1,200 combined. I bought two of them, so $600 a piece, and it jetted up to about $1,100 shortly after that, and then then went back down and ended, you know, cratered around 200. And people were just making fun of so many people. Like, oh, you bought it 700, you bought it 800, you got wrecked. And now we look back at that and we just laugh. And people wish they could have bought it at 800 and 1100. You know, 1100 was just unthinkable. It's like, oh, it'll never get back to 1100. You know, so what I tell people is, first of all, value your wealth in Bitcoin. Try to get as much Bitcoin. Don't worry about the fiat price. But we're one day closer to 20,000. We're one day closer to returning to 20,000 because Bitcoin has always returned to its all-time high in dollars. It's just a matter of time, you know. And again, it's so early on. We haven't seen a real bubble yet. We haven't seen. One day it'll probably go from 40,000 to 100,000 and then crash down to 60,000. And there'll be all sorts of panic and insanity at that point. So we haven't even seen wild numbers. And by the way, we were talking about custodial services, you better believe that if one day when Bitcoin is around $80,000, if a big custodial name gets hacked, there'll be a tremendous crash. But that's why you have to train your strong hand now. You have to be able to think like, big names like Rubini and Schiff and everything, they rip on Bitcoin. Don't let it bother you. Huge price drops. I tell people all the time, we're going to have days where it goes down by $2,000. You got to get used to that kind of thing. When will Bitcoin become a settled in terms of dollars? When will it not jump around as much? Probably not until after the 2024 halving, I would say. I mean, we've got a lot of turbulence ahead of us. So I would just say, have a strong hand, people. Don't panic.
So, just looking at the Amazon.com stock performance over time, since it went public, just to give people an idea of turbulence. So the stock goes public around 1997, around May, at $1.73, something like that. Goes up until the end of the dot-com bubble to 78. So that's 80 times your money, and we're talking 3 years. It then proceeds to crash. Amazon.com proceeds to crash from about 80 per share to about 6 per share. That's a 95% drop in about a year and a half. At $6, it proceeds to go on until 2010 to about 50 per stock per share, and today it's at 1,835 as we're doing this interview. So something that crashes 95% does not mean that it is a bad investment. It just means that it got insanely overvalued or overpriced, however you want to call it, and then it needs to play catch up. In other words, it needs to create some value to justify its previous price or higher prices. Could Amazon.com's management screwed up Amazon, and then Amazon would have stayed at about $5 or $6 per share, and all the naysayers would have said, hey, this was a huge bubble to begin with, and they would have been right. But since Amazon.com's management and leadership made their way to world stardom and being the best performing stock probably in the past 18 years, this is exactly the sort of potential that there is with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin crashed from $20,000 to about $6,000 per coin. If the development keeps on making strides ahead, then we'll see a situation where Bitcoin's price will again be $20,000 and probably more. So this is not a situation where the price drop determines the outcome of what's going to happen. The people that are behind the scenes developing the Lightning Network have a lot to do with where Bitcoin's price will go, or if it will be a failed technology in the future. So this is the huge bet. This is the speculation here, and I just wanted to give a little bit of my input. Adam, what are the most important things that you think about when it comes to Bitcoin? What are some of your key points and key things that you're watching?
Well, you mean developments or the things that I care about? There's a limited supply. no matter what, they can't print this thing. That's what's different. Comparing, I like to compare it to fiat. Like, we never know how much U.S. dollars are going to be printed by the United States. We know that in the long run with Bitcoin, they're only going to be 21 million.
Well, and that's a great point. That's a great point. And just to kind of make this a conversation, it's important for people to understand that the difference between Bitcoin and fiat currency is that fiat currency is basically credit. So in other words, when it's created, there's credit created and there's a debtor and a creditor. With Bitcoin, there is no debtor and creditor. This is straight on cash, a form of cash which is transacted. There is no leverage of Bitcoin. You can't leverage it. There is no debtor and creditor economy here. So this is not to be compared with fiat currencies and how they are designed and operated. Fiat currencies are a medium of exchange as well, but at their fundamental core, they are debt. And so this is a very important distinction, which is good and bad, right? It's good and bad, but it is a very important distinction to make. So the fact that there is a finite amount of units, we all know how much they are. It's not within anybody's control to increase or decrease the shrink or to increase the balance sheet. This is part of the fact that this is not a debtor and creditor economy. This is a straight medium of exchange cash transaction. I'm sorry. Please continue, Adam.
Well, so something else about Bitcoin when compared to, I guess, other forms of money and altcoins. It is decentralized in every single way. Even the founder is probably dead or he's just totally disappeared. No one even knows who the founder is. Even with coins like Litecoin, which, are decentralized, they have that centralized aspect where the founder is, we know who he is, Charlie Lee. And in theory, that can be a weak point. Bitcoin does not have that. Now, of course, with the fiat, of course, that's very centralized, which it's printed out by governments. But there are all these people that are talking about to diversify into other coins. And the direction in the mainstream cryptocurrency world, I mean, if you're a newbie and you find out about cryptocurrency, you're probably going to go, in America at least, you're going to go to Coinbase and you're going to see there are 5 different cryptocurrencies there. And you're going to think, well, they're all the same. I better just diversify and get all 5. I don't want to get stuck with one. They don't realize that Bitcoin is different than all the rest, and that there is a large hunk of the cryptocurrency population in the ecosystem who just focuses on Bitcoin. So much is being built on Bitcoin. And again, Ethereum is cool also. Ethereum is apple and oranges compared to Bitcoin. I mean, you're supposed to build apps on top of it. But again, they have that centralized aspect where, their founder, if he says something, if Vitalik says something, people do it. If he died, God forbid, I mean, that would have a huge impact on the value of Ethereum. Bitcoin does not have that centralized risk. So I like to tell people that, and I like to tell people don't diversify for the sake of diversification. And if you want to buy another altcoin, here's what you got to do. Know how to send a Bitcoin before you buy a Litecoin. And that seems really basic to a lot of people, but there's so many people that do not even know how to, who have never sent a Bitcoin, who have just bought a Bitcoin on Coinbase, and now they own 4 other altcoins too, and they're just keeping it all on Coinbase. And again, Coinbase is insured and all that, but that's not what crypto is. You got to know how to send this stuff. You got to know how to store it yourself, is what I tell people. But again, if you know how to send a Bitcoin, you really get a feel of cryptocurrency, a much better feel, because you're playing around with the numbers and everything. And then you'll understand, well, is diversification really for me? Or am I just diversifying for the sake of diversification, which I think a lot of people are. And then some people just take it to extremes and become traders of 5th-tier altcoins and stuff, which is not looking real good right now. I mean, there was a time when all the altcoins were going up, and now they've all gone down, that people don't understand. They should have just kept everything in Bitcoin, and they would have been in a much better situation.
Adam, 2 things. First of all, what are you up to these days? How can people check out more of your work?
Well, okay, I post a new video every single day on my Bitcoin Meister channel on YouTube. You can look that up at Bitcoin Meister on YouTube, but you can go to disruptmeister.com, and that'll take you to all my videos. And on Twitter, I'm constantly out there. TechBalt, TechBalt on Twitter. And I just travel around the world meeting Bitcoin people. I'm a perpetual traveler. I don't have a home anymore. I am from Baltimore, Maryland originally, and I go back for Thanksgiving and other holidays. But I'm always going to Bitcoin events. I'm speaking in New Orleans on December 3rd and 4th at an event there. So that if you go to my videos, it's all linked to below, all my videos, all my information.
Well, Adam, that's awesome, and I'm glad we got to chat and catch up here, and we'll definitely touch base in a few months. Let's see what happens with everything that's going on, and obviously the big items are these regulatory issues that are going to be decided, actually starting immediately with some key decisions by the authorities, and We'll definitely be in touch soon.
Well, be patient with that Bitcoin ETF. If it gets rejected now, eventually, whether it be in 2019, one will be approved. So hey, pound that like button, everybody. That's my big saying. Like this video, like this podcast. It was a great time.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.